In the shadow-laden streets of Seattle's forgotten district, where misfortune breeds like rats in the rain, a deadly secret lurks in plain sight. Behind the squeaking wheels of a titanium chair, behind the seemingly helpless facade of a disabled man, sits one of the most lethal operatives the shadow world has ever known. When local thugs mistake his wheelchair for weakness, they'll learn too late that they've awakened a sleeping giant, one who kills with surgical precision, even from a seated position. This is the story of how a gang of brutal enforcers picked the wrong victim to terrorize, unaware that his chair isn't just a means of mobility. It's a throne for a professional killer. If you want to see more intense stories of justice and redemption, make sure to hit subscribe, turn on notifications, and join our community of thriller enthusiasts. Now, let's dive into this shocking true tale. Mornvale District had a pulse of its own, a sickly rhythm that echoed through rain-slicked streets where neon signs bled their colors into endless puddles. In this forgotten corner of Seattle, where Victorian mansions rotted like extracted teeth and fog crept like living breath through labyrinthine alleys, Kiernan Wraith Kalvaris maintained his vigil from a custom titanium wheelchair at the end of Ravenwing Lane. His house stood apart from its decaying neighbors, not through grandeur but through precision. The modest Victorian's paint, though weathered, showed no chips. Its small garden bloomed with night-blooming jasmine and moonflowers, their white petals glowing like stars in the perpetual gloom. To passers-by, it seemed a curious anomaly, this immaculate home maintained by a man whose legs had been shattered beyond repair. Kiernan's hands, calloused and scarred, rested on the custom wheels of his chair as he observed the street through eyes that missed nothing. Those same hands had once ended lives in 15 different countries, had orchestrated the fall of dictators, and had signed mission reports that would never see the light of day. Now they tended flowers and turned pages of dog-eared books, at least on the surface. The drizzle subsided momentarily, allowing the sound of small feet pattering on wet concrete to reach his trained ears. Soren Thane, the 7-year-old boy from next door, approached with his usual careful steps. The child hadn't spoken a word since witnessing his older brother's death in a gang-related shooting 6 months ago, but his eyes held an intelligence that Kiernan recognized, the look of someone who had seen too much too soon. "Evening, Soren," Kiernan said, his voice carrying the gravel of too many nights in too many war zones. The boy nodded, clutching a small robot toy that glowed with blue LED lights. He moved to sit on the bottom step of Kiernan's porch, his usual spot during these twilight visits. From inside the house, Kiernan's security monitors blinked silently, showing feed from cameras disguised as ordinary fixtures throughout the neighborhood. On one screen, 3 figures in black hoodies moved with predatory purpose down Morton Street, spray cans visible in their hands. The rooks were marking their territory again, pushing deeper into Mornvale with each passing week. Kiernan's jaw tightened imperceptibly. He'd chosen this neighborhood specifically for its strategic value, a forgotten place where he could fade into background noise, where his wheelchair would be just another symbol of urban decay rather than a curiosity. But lately, the rooks had been changing the equation, led by their ruthless commander Alaric Raven Voss. The gang's violence had escalated from simple territory marking to extortion, from threats to actual bloodshed. Last week, they'd put Mrs. Chen's grandson in the hospital for refusing to pay protection money for their small grocery store. 3 days ago, they'd firebombed the community center that Isolde Cross had built from her retirement savings. A flash of memory hit Kiernan. Another time, another wheelchair. Neve, his wife, in the hospital after the accident. "Promise me," she'd whispered through broken lips. "Promise me you won't go back to that life." He'd promised. 2 days later, she was gone, and he was left with titanium rods in his legs and a void nothing could fill. Soren's small hand on his wheelchair brought Kiernan back to the present. The boy pointed urgently down the street, where Dr. Lysander Thane was speed-walking toward them, his hospital scrubs visible under his rain jacket. Behind him, 2 Rooks members emerged from an alley, their hoodies marked with the gang's distinctive chess piece emblem. "Soren, inside," Kiernan commanded softly. The boy hesitated for only a moment before slipping through the front door, which Kiernan always left unlocked during these evening visits. Dr. Thane's pace quickened as the gang members gained ground, their intentions clear in their predatory stride. Kiernan's hands tensed on his wheelchair's arms, feeling the hidden mechanisms beneath the innocent-looking frame. In his former life, he'd been known as Wraith, a ghost in the intelligence community, a shadow operative who could enter any facility, eliminate any target, and disappear without a trace. The wheelchair had changed how he operated, but not his lethality. If anything, it had made him more dangerous. No one suspected the man in the wheelchair until it was far too late. The first drops of a new rainfall began to fall as Dr. Thane reached the property line. In the growing darkness, Kiernan's house stood like a lighthouse in a storm, offering sanctuary. But as the rooks closed in, Kiernan knew his carefully maintained cover was about to be tested. The question wasn't whether he would break his promise to Neve, but how many bones he would have to break to keep his new neighbors safe. Thunder rolled overhead, and Kiernan Wraith Kalvaris began to move his wheelchair forward, rolling toward a confrontation that would shatter the uneasy peace of Mornvale District forever. The rooks moved with the arrogant swagger of predators who had never met a true hunter. "Hey, Doc," the taller one, Cypher Kale, called out, his voice carrying the sharp edge of malice. "Heard you've been treating folks without asking us first. That's bad for business." Dr. Lysander Thane stood his ground at the edge of Kiernan's property, his hospital ID badge catching the dim glow of streetlights. "I took an oath to help people," he said, his voice steady despite the fear Kiernan could detect in his stance. "I don't need permission to do my job." Kiernan wheeled forward silently, the custom titanium frame of his chair barely making a sound on the wet concrete. Rain continued to fall, casting a silvery sheen over the scene. The second rook, Shade Severus, noticed him first, nudging Cypher with an elbow. "Well, look what we got here," Severus sneered, his facial piercings catching the light. "The neighborhood cripples coming to play hero." Kiernan's voice, when it came, carried the chill of Arctic winds. "The doctor is under my protection. Leave now." The laugh that burst from Cypher's throat echoed off the Victorian facades. "Protection? From you?" He stepped closer, towering over Kiernan's seated form. "What are you gonna do, roll over our toes?" In his earpiece, hidden beneath graying hair, Kiernan heard the soft beep of his security system. The cameras had mapped their positions, confirmed no other hostiles in the immediate vicinity. His fingers tightened imperceptibly on the wheelchair's custom arms, feeling the pressure plates that would release his first line of defense. "Last warning," Kiernan said softly, almost gently. "Walk away." Cypher's response was to reach for the doctor, his fingers curling into a fist. It was the last mistake he would make with that hand for a long time. Kiernan's wheelchair exploded into action. A hydraulic boost system, powered by compressed air, launched him forward as his right hand grabbed Cypher's extended wrist. The momentum, combined with precise pressure point manipulation, sent the gang member flying over Kiernan's shoulder. Cypher hit the wet pavement with a sickening crack, his arm bent at an angle nature never intended. Severus barely had time to register his companion's fall before Kiernan's wheelchair spun, its reinforced frame slamming into his knees. As the gang member buckled, Kiernan's left hand shot out, fingers finding the cluster of nerves at the base of Severus's neck. The rook dropped like a puppet with cut strings, unconscious before he hit the ground. The entire confrontation had lasted less than 5 seconds. Dr. Thane stood frozen, his eyes wide behind rain-spattered glasses. Kiernan's voice cut through his shock. "Inside. Now." They moved quickly, Kiernan wheeling backward to cover their retreat, the doctor hurrying up the porch steps. As they entered the house, Soren appeared from the shadows of the living room, his eyes huge in his pale face. "Lock the door," Kiernan instructed as he moved to his bank of monitors. The screens showed the street where Cypher was struggling to his feet, cradling his shattered arm. Severus remained motionless, but breathing. "They'll be back," Kiernan said, his tone matter-of-fact. "And they'll bring friends." "What? How did you—" Dr. Thane struggled to find words, his medical training warring with what he'd just witnessed. "Who are you?" Kiernan's eyes remained on the screens, watching as Cypher stumbled away, leaving his unconscious companion behind. Someone who's tired of watching good people suffer. He turned to face the doctor and his son. "You should both stay here tonight. It's not safe at your house." As if to emphasize his point, distant sirens began to wail. On one of the monitors, a police cruiser turned onto Ravenwing Lane, its lights painting the wet streets in alternating red and blue. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Detective Sindra Kestrel would be arriving soon, asking questions that Kiernan couldn't fully answer. "The guest room is upstairs," Kiernan continued, his voice softening as he addressed Soren. "Your father can show you the way." As they climbed the stairs, Kiernan wheeled to his study, a room filled with books on medicine, military history, and urban warfare. Hidden panels in the walls concealed an arsenal that would have impressed his former handlers at the agency. He had promised Neve he wouldn't return to that life, but she would have understood this. Sometimes protection required action. The phone on his desk, a secure line that shouldn't have existed, buzzed once. A text message appeared from a number he hadn't seen in years. "They're not just street thugs. Raven works for someone bigger. Watch your six, Wraith. Echo." Kiernan deleted the message, his mind already calculating angles, assessing threats, and planning countermoves. The Rooks had made a critical error tonight. They had mistaken his wheelchair for weakness, his quiet demeanor for fear. They would learn, as so many others had before them, that some predators hide in plain sight. Outside, the rain continued to fall on Mornvale District, washing away the blood from the pavement, but not the certainty of violence to come. In his wheelchair, Kiernan Wraith Kalvaris began to prepare for war. Detective Sindra Kestrel stood in Kiernan's living room, her sharp eyes taking in details most would miss. The rain had intensified outside, drumming against the Victorian windows like impatient fingers. Behind her, Officer Rhodes Blackthorne photographed the street where the confrontation had occurred, though the rain had already washed away most evidence. "So you're telling me," Sindra said, her tone carefully neutral, "that two known Rooks members just happened to trip and fall outside your house? One with a compound arm fracture, the other with temporary paralysis?" Kiernan met her gaze steadily from his wheelchair. "The streets are treacherous when wet, Detective. Perhaps they should have worn better shoes." A ghost of a smile touched Sindra's lips before vanishing. She'd been working Mornvale District long enough to know when someone was protecting their neighborhood. But there was something about Kiernan that set off her finely tuned instincts. The way he positioned his chair to always face exits. How his hands never strayed far from the armrests. "The thing is, Mr. Kalvaris," she continued, pacing slowly, "these incidents are becoming more frequent. 2 weeks ago, 3 Rooks ended up in the hospital after trying to shake down Mrs. Chen's grocery. Last week, someone dismantled a drug operation in the old paper mill. Very professional work." She paused, studying his reaction. "Almost. Military precision." "Fascinating," Kiernan replied blandly. "Though I fail to see how this concerns a disabled man who tends his garden and reads books." Before Sindra could respond, her radio crackled. "Detective, we've got trouble at Mornvale Community Center. Multiple suspects armed. Isolde Cross is inside." The change in Kiernan was subtle, but immediate. His shoulders tensed, fingers tightening fractionally on his wheelchair's arms. Sindra noticed and filed it away for later consideration. "This isn't over, Mr. Kalvaris," she said, moving toward the door. "Stay available." As soon as the police cars pulled away, Kiernan wheeled to his study. The hidden panels in the walls slid open silently, revealing an array of specialized equipment. He selected items with practiced efficiency: a modified stun gun designed to look like a phone, a set of ceramic throwing blades that would bypass metal detectors, and a small device that could override most security systems. A soft sound made him turn. Soren stood in the doorway, his eyes wide at the revealed arsenal. Instead of fear, Kiernan saw something familiar in the boy's gaze. Recognition. The child had seen weapons before, had watched his brother die in a hail of gang bullets. "You're going to help Miss Isolde?" Soren asked, his voice barely a whisper. It was the first time he'd spoken in 6 months. Kiernan nodded slowly. "Yes. But I need you to stay here with your father. Can you do that?" Soren's hand moved in a gesture Kiernan recognized from his military days. The sign for Watch 6, cover your back. The boy had clearly learned more than anyone suspected from his late brother. Dr. Thane appeared behind his son, medical bag in hand. "I'm coming with you," he said firmly. "If there's going to be violence, they'll need a doctor." "No," Kiernan's voice was steel. "You're both staying here. My security system will keep you safe." He wheeled to a cabinet and removed what looked like a simple tablet. "This shows camera feeds from around the neighborhood. If anyone approaches the house, the system will alert you and activate countermeasures." Minutes later, Kiernan emerged from a concealed side door into the rain-soaked alley behind his house. His wheelchair moved silently through puddles, its waterproof motors handling the terrain with ease. The community center was 6 blocks away, 6 blocks of territory increasingly under Rook's control. His earpiece crackled with an encrypted transmission. "Wraith, you copy? It's Echo." "I copy," Kiernan sub-vocalized, the sound carried through bone conduction. "Situation? Raven's making his play. He's got 8 men at the community center, heavily armed, but that's not the real problem." Echo's voice was grim. "I did some digging. The Rooks are working for someone called the Director, some kind of shadow corporation looking to buy up Mornvale cheap. They're using the gang to drive down property values." Kiernan processed this as he moved through the shadows. It explained the escalating violence, the targeted attacks on community pillars like Isolde Cross and Dr. Thane. The community center must be holding out on selling. Bingo. Isolde's been organizing the neighborhood, helping people keep their homes. She's become a problem they need to solve. A different kind of rain began to fall, bullets peppering the pavement near Kiernan's chair. He spun into cover behind a dumpster as 3 Rooks emerged from a side street, led by Talon Theron. "Found your crippled ass now," Talon sneered, racking his shotgun. "Boss wants to thank you proper for what you did to Cypher." Kiernan's hands moved with practiced efficiency, activating hidden mechanisms in his chair. "Tell your boss he should have done his homework." The wheelchair's left arm dropped away, revealing a compressed air launcher. Some cripples bite back. The launcher fired with a soft phut, sending a spread of rubber bullets into the gang members. 2 dropped immediately, but Talon managed to squeeze off a shot. The blast caught Kiernan's chair, denting its armored frame but not penetrating. Kiernan's return shot took Talon in the chest, sending him sprawling. The gang lieutenant tried to rise but found his body wouldn't respond. The rubber bullets were coated with a fast-acting paralytic. "Stay down," Kiernan advised, already moving past them. "It'll wear off in an hour, unless you move. Then the paralysis becomes permanent." He reached the community center as police sirens began to wail in the distance. Through his thermal imaging display, he could see 6 heat signatures inside, 5 clustered near the front, probably Raven's men, and 1 isolated in the office, Isolde. The rain intensified, providing cover for his approach. In his ear, Echo's voice was tense. "Be careful, Wraith. Word is Raven's not just muscle. He's ex-military like us. Spec Ops gone bad." Kiernan allowed himself a grim smile as he positioned his chair near the building's side entrance. Then he should know better than to corner a wounded animal. Lightning flashed overhead, illuminating the community center's windows like a camera flash. Inside, Isolde Cross was about to learn that her guardian angel came with wheels instead of wings, and the Rooks were about to discover why Kiernan had earned the name Wraith, long before he ever touched a wheelchair. The community center's side entrance yielded to Kiernan's electronic lockpick in seconds. Inside, the building was dark, save for harsh fluorescent light spilling from the main office. Rain drummed against the roof, masking the soft whir of his wheelchair's motors as he moved through shadow-draped hallways. Through his earpiece, he could hear fragments of conversation from the office where Raven held Isolde. "Sign the papers," Raven's voice carried the casual cruelty of a man used to being obeyed. "The director's offer is more than fair for this dump. This dump is people's lifeline." Isolde's voice was strained but defiant. "Their children learn here. Their elderly have somewhere to gather. I won't let you destroy that." A sharp crack echoed, the sound of a hand striking flesh. Kiernan's fingers tightened on his wheelchair's controls, but he forced himself to stay patient, to assess. His thermal imaging showed 3 guards in the main room, 2 in the hallway near the office. All armed. "Your heroics are misplaced," Raven continued. "The director wants this neighborhood and he'll get it. The only question is how many people suffer before you understand that." Kiernan reached into a hidden compartment of his chair, removing what looked like a small silver marble. With precise calculation, he rolled it down the hallway toward the 2 guards. The sphere split open silently, releasing an invisible cloud of sedative gas. "Movement by the east door," one guard muttered into his radio before the gas took effect. Both men slumped to the floor, their weapons clattering. "Check it out," Raven ordered through the radio. "And someone tell me where the hell Talon's team is." 3 sets of footsteps approached Kiernan's position. He smiled grimly in the darkness. They were doing exactly what he'd planned, splitting up, becoming vulnerable. The first guard rounded the corner, night vision goggles giving him a false sense of security. Kiernan's chair pivoted silently. His hand shot out, finding pressure points in the man's neck that dropped him instantly. The second guard had time to raise his weapon before Kiernan's modified stun gun sent him into convulsions. The third managed to squeeze off a shot, the bullet sparking off Kiernan's reinforced wheelchair frame before a throwing blade found his shoulder, the sedative coating sending him into unconsciousness. "What the hell is going on out there?" Raven's voice carried edge now. "Report." Silence answered him. Kiernan could hear him cursing, then, "Watch her. I'll handle this myself." The office door burst open, Raven emerging with military precision, his stance revealing his special forces training. His eyes widened slightly at the sight of his fallen men, then narrowed as he spotted Kiernan's wheelchair at the end of the hall. "Well," Raven's laugh held no humor. "The cripple has teeth. I should have known. There was something too clean about those takedowns at the paper mill." "Let her go." Kiernan's voice was calm, measured. "Take your men and leave Mornvale. Last warning." Raven's response was to fire, 3 shots in rapid succession. But Kiernan was already moving, his chair spinning as bullets traced his path. He triggered another hidden mechanism, and smoke filled the hallway. "Cute tricks," Raven called out, switching to thermal imaging goggles. "But I've got all night, old man, and backup's already on the way." "No, it isn't." Kiernan's voice seemed to come from everywhere at once, a combat ventriloquism technique he'd learned years ago. "Talon's team is down. Cypher's in the hospital. You're alone." A flash of uncertainty crossed Raven's face, quickly replaced by rage. He fired again, but Kiernan was gone, the wheelchair's soft hum fading into silence. "You think this changes anything?" Raven spat. "The director doesn't lose. Even if you kill me, he'll send others. This neighborhood belongs to him. The neighborhood belongs to its people." Kiernan's voice was behind him now. Raven spun, but too late. The wheelchair's reinforced frame slammed into his knees, sending him stumbling. Before he could recover, Kiernan's hands found key nerve clusters in his shoulders and neck. Raven went down hard, his body paralyzed but his mind fully aware. Kiernan loomed over him, no longer pretending to be helpless. "Who is the director?" Kiernan demanded. Raven tried to laugh, but it came out as a gurgle. "You're dead, you know that? He'll burn this whole district down to get what he wants." From the office, Isolde emerged, her face bruised but her eyes fierce. "Kiernan? What? How did you—" "Call Detective Kestrel." Kiernan cut her off, his eyes still on Raven. "Tell her you've got a gift-wrapped gang leader for her. Then get somewhere safe. This isn't over." Sirens approached in the distance as rain continued to pour outside. Kiernan's earpiece crackled with Echo's voice. "Wraith, we've got problems, just intercepted some radio chatter. The director's sending in professional cleaners. They'll be there by dawn." Kiernan watched as Isolde made her call, her hands shaking but her voice steady. The community center would survive another night, but Echo was right. This was escalating beyond street gangs and local thugs. The director, whoever he was, had just made it personal. "Good," Kiernan sub-vocalized to Echo. "Let them come. Time to show them why they called me Wraith." He wheeled toward the exit, passing Raven's still paralyzed form. The gang leader's eyes followed him, widening as Kiernan paused to say one last thing. "When you can move again, tell the director something for me. Tell him Mornvale has a guardian now, and I've killed better men than him." Outside, thunder rolled across the sky like distant artillery, and Kiernan Kalvaris disappeared into the rain-soaked darkness, his wheelchair leaving no trace of its passage. The real war for Mornvale was about to begin. Dawn crept over Mornvale like a guilty intruder, the rain finally subsiding to reveal streets slick with memory of violence. Kiernan sat in his study, surrounded by monitors displaying security feeds from throughout the neighborhood. His wheelchair, bearing fresh battle scars from the night's encounters, had been restored to its innocent appearance. "The director's cleaners," Echo's voice crackled through a secure line. "They're already here. 3 teams, professional wetwork specialists. They've taken up positions around the district." Kiernan's fingers danced across a keyboard, cycling through camera feeds. There, a black SUV with tinted windows parked near Mrs. Chen's grocery. And there, 2 men in business suits moving with too much purpose through the morning fog. His trained eye caught the subtle bulges of concealed weapons. "Background?" he asked, already calculating angles and escape routes. "That's the thing," Echo replied, concern evident in his voice. "These aren't regular contractors. They're from Obsidian Solutions Group." Kiernan's hands stilled on the keyboard. Obsidian Solutions. He knew that name from his past life. A private military company that specialized in making problems disappear, along with anyone connected to them. "There's more," Echo continued. "I managed to hack some of their communications. The director, Wraith, it's Victor Crane." The name hit Kiernan like a physical blow. Memories flooded back. A mission in Kazakhstan that went sideways, a betrayal that cost 12 good operators their lives. Victor Crane had been their handler, the man who sold them out for profit, the same man whose actions had indirectly led to Neve's death. A soft knock interrupted his thoughts. Dr. Thane stood in the doorway, medical bag in hand. "Your leg brace needs adjusting after last night," he said quietly. "And there's something you should see." Kiernan followed him to the living room where Soren sat cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by papers covered in detailed drawings. But these weren't the usual childish sketches. They were tactical maps of Mornvale, showing patrol routes of the rooks, security camera blind spots, and potential sniper positions. "He's been watching," Dr. Thane explained, his voice tight with concern. "Ever since his brother. He sees everything." Kiernan wheeled closer, studying the drawings. The tactical accuracy was impressive, especially from a 7-year-old. "Soren," he said gently, "how long have you been mapping the neighborhood?" The boy looked up, his eyes holding that same haunted intelligence. "Since they killed Tommy, he taught me to watch, said knowledge is power." His voice was barely above a whisper. "The bad men are back, different ones. They smell like government." Before Kiernan could respond, his security system pinged. Multiple approaching vehicles, armed signatures detected. Through the window, he caught the glint of morning sun on gunmetal. "Upstairs," he ordered Dr. Thane and Soren. "Panic room. Now." As they hurried to safety, Kiernan activated his house's defensive protocols. Steel shutters slid silently over windows, doors sealed with reinforced locks, and hidden turrets emerged from innocuous fixtures. "Echo, I need everything you've got on Obsidian's current deployment." 3 4-man teams, Echo replied. Team 1 covering the main street, Team 2 moving through the alleys, Team 3. Hell, they're on the rooftops, they're boxing you in, Wraith. Kiernan's mind raced through options. Taking on 12 professional operators while protecting civilians would be challenging even if he had full use of his legs, from the wheelchair. His thoughts were interrupted by his secure phone buzzing. Unknown number. "Hello, Wraith." Victor Crane's voice was exactly as Kiernan remembered it. Cultured, amused, deadly. Or should I say Kiernan now? The years haven't been kind to you, I hear. Crane. Kiernan kept his voice neutral while his hands moved across his wheelchair's hidden controls, activating defense systems. Still hiding behind other men's guns? Come now, old friend. Is that any way to greet your former handler? Especially when I'm offering you a chance to walk away. Figuratively speaking, of course. Outside, Kiernan could see Obsidian operators moving into position, their movements betraying their professional training. "This neighborhood," Crane continued, "it's nothing to you. Just a place to hide. To pretend you're not what we both know you are. A killer. Walk away, and I'll ensure you're well compensated. Fight and... well, wheelchairs do make such easy targets." Kiernan's response was to trigger his house's first line of defense. High-frequency sonic emitters activated, sending the closest Obsidian team staggering back, their equilibrium shattered. Still using sound as a weapon, Crane sighed. Predictable as ever. Kill him. The morning erupted into chaos. Bullets peppered the house's armored exterior, while Kiernan's automated defenses returned fire with rubber rounds and taser projectiles. Through his security feeds, he watched 2 operators go down, but the others adapted quickly, using professional tactics to probe his defenses. "Echo, I need an exit strategy." "Working on it. But Wraith, there's something else. I found a paper trail. The shell companies Crane's using to buy up Mornvale, they're connected to the same people who arranged the hit on Neve." The revelation landed like a physical blow. Kiernan had always suspected Neve's accident wasn't random, but hearing it confirmed. A crash from above. Team 3 had breached the roof. Gas canisters rolled down the stairs, filling the house with green-tinted smoke. "You're slipping, old man," Crane taunted through the phone. "Time to end this." Kiernan smiled grimly as he activated his wheelchair's sealed oxygen system. "You forgot something, Victor. You're not the only one who can call in favors." On cue, Detective Sindra Kestrel's voice boomed through a megaphone outside. "This is the police. We have the building surrounded." "Impossible," Crane snarled. "We monitored all communications." "Did you?" Kiernan's smile grew colder. "Or did you only monitor the ones I wanted you to see?" Through his cameras, he watched as police vehicles flooded the street, officers taking up positions. The Obsidian teams hesitated, caught between their mission and the risk of exposure. "This isn't over," Crane promised before the line went dead. In the sudden silence, Kiernan wheeled to his panic room controls, releasing Dr. Thane and Soren. The boy immediately ran to the window, watching as the Obsidian teams melted away into Mornvale's morning shadows. "They'll be back," Soren said softly, his tactical mind already working. "Yes," Kiernan agreed, his thoughts turning to Neve, to revenge long delayed. "But next time, we'll be hunting them." Detective Sindra Kestrel stood in Kiernan's bullet-scarred living room, her sharp eyes cataloging details most would miss. The morning sun filtered through holes in the steel shutters, creating patterns that reminded Kiernan of stars in a combat zone. "Professional hit squad," she said, holding up a spent casing. "Military-grade ammunition. Care to explain why a disabled man who tends his garden warranted this kind of attention?" Before Kiernan could respond, his secure phone buzzed. Another text from Echo. "Urgent. Crane's making moves. Dr. Thane's hospital records accessed, they know." Kiernan's expression didn't change, but his hands tightened imperceptibly on his wheelchair's arms. "Detective, what I'm about to tell you will either end your career or make it. Your choice." Sindra studied him for a long moment before pulling up a chair. "Talk." "Victor Crane. Former CIA handler turned private military contractor. He's behind the rooks, the property grabs, all of it. But it's bigger than real estate. Mornvale sits on something he wants. Something worth killing for." "The old military bunker," Sindra breathed. "The one they sealed up in the 60s. We always wondered why property values here stayed so artificially low." A crash from upstairs interrupted them. Soren came running down, his eyes wide. They took Dad. Men in suits. They came through the back when the police weren't looking. Kiernan was already moving, his wheelchair humming as he accessed his security feeds. There, a glimpse of Dr. Thane being bundled into a black van. Obsidian operators moving with clinical efficiency. They'll take him to the bunker, Kiernan said, wheeling toward his study. Crane's using it as his base of operations. Detective, I need you to evacuate the neighborhood. Whatever's down there, Crane's ready to burn Mornvale to the ground to protect it. You know I should arrest you, Syndra replied, but her hand was already on her phone. All of this. It's way above my pay grade. Then don't think of it as a detective, Kiernan said, opening hidden panels to reveal his arsenal. Think of it as someone protecting their home. Soren watched as Kiernan armed himself, recognition flickering in his eyes. Like Tommy did. Kiernan paused, looking at the boy. Your brother. He wasn't just watching the rooks, was he? He found something in the bunker. Soren nodded, pulling a folded paper from his pocket, a crude map drawn in a teenager's hand. He said it was bigger than gangs, said there were secrets down there. The night they killed him, he was trying to get proof. Echo's voice crackled through Kiernan's earpiece. Wraith. Satellite imagery shows heavy activity around the bunker entrance. They're moving something out, or in. How long? Kiernan asked, loading specialized ammunition into his chair's hidden compartments. Hours at most. And there's chatter about cleaning house. They're not planning to leave witnesses. Syndra, overhearing through her own police channels, straightened. I'll coordinate evacuation, but Kalvaris, what exactly are we dealing with here? Kiernan's voice was grim as he checked his weapons. In Kazakhstan, Crane sold out an entire ops team to protect something called Project Oracle. The bunker must be connected. Whatever's down there, it was worth killing 12 good men for. Worth killing my wife for. Your wife? Syndra's eyes narrowed. The accident 3 years ago? That wasn't random. Neve was investigating defense contracts, following money trails. She got too close. Kiernan's hand stilled on his wheelchair. I thought I'd left that life behind, tried to honor her wish for peace. But Crane brought the war to us. Through the window, they could see police vehicles beginning the evacuation. Residents emerged from their homes, confused but compliant. The morning fog still clung to Mornvale's streets, as if the district itself was trying to hide. Soren, I need you to go with Detective Kestrel, Kiernan said, but the boy was already shaking his head. I know ways into the bunker Tommy found. Secret passages. You need me. Absolutely not, Syndra interjected. He's a child. But Kiernan saw the same steel in Soren's eyes that he'd seen in young operators, the kind that wouldn't be swayed. Your father risked everything to help people, he said quietly. Now we help him. But you follow my orders exactly. Understood? Soren nodded, his face set with determination beyond his years. Echo, I need everything you can get me on the bunker's layout. Already on it. Pulling up old military schematics. Wraith, this is bigger than we thought. The complex goes down 20 levels, and I'm picking up massive power readings. Outside, the evacuation continued as Kiernan made final preparations. His wheelchair, now fully armed, hummed with lethal potential. He'd added extra armor plating, specialized electronics, and enough firepower to take on a small army. Detective, he said, turning to Syndra, once the evacuation is complete, I need you to do something else. Find Isolde Cross. Everything Tommy discovered. Everything Crane's trying to hide. She might have copies. The community center's records go back decades. Syndra nodded, understanding the real mission. Insurance, in case they failed. One more thing, Kiernan added, his voice taking on an edge that made even Soren step back. If we're not out in 3 hours, burn it all. The bunker, the records, everything. Some secrets should stay buried. As they prepared to move out, Kiernan's phone buzzed one final time. A message from Crane. Did you really think your wife's death was the end of it? Come find me, Wraith. Let's finish what we started in Kazakhstan. Kiernan deleted the message, his mind already shifting into combat mode. In his wheelchair, surrounded by fog and morning silence, he looked more predator than prey. Crane had made a fatal mistake. He'd given Kiernan something he'd lacked for 3 years, a clear target. "Time to go," he said softly, more to himself than his companions. "The hunt begins." The fog swallowed them as they moved toward the bunker, 3 unlikely hunters pursuing dangerous prey. Behind them, Mornvale began to empty, its residents fleeing secrets that had festered beneath their feet for decades. The final battle for the district's soul was about to begin. The entrance to the military bunker lay hidden behind decades of urban decay, disguised as an abandoned maintenance tunnel beneath Mornvale's crumbling infrastructure. Soren led them through a maze of service corridors, his small form moving with the confidence of someone following a dead brother's footsteps. "Tommy mapped it all," the boy whispered, pointing to marks scratched into the concrete walls. "Left symbols so he wouldn't get lost. The main entrance is guarded, but this way." He pressed against a section of wall that looked identical to the rest, revealing a narrow passage. "This goes deep." Kiernan's wheelchair, modified for the infiltration, moved silently on specialized tracks. His thermal imaging showed no heat signatures in the immediate vicinity, but the deeper passages were shielded, black voids in his surveillance. "Echo, what are you getting?" "Heavy electromagnetic interference." Echo's voice crackled through static. "Whatever's down there is putting out serious power. But I found something in the old files. Project Oracle wasn't just about weapons. It was about prediction. Some kind of quantum computing initiative that went dark in the 60s. The passage opened into a wider tunnel, the air growing colder as they descended. Modern security cameras had been mounted on the ancient walls, their red lights blinking in the darkness. "They'll know we're coming," Kiernan said, his voice low. "Soren, remember what I told you. If I say run, you run. No questions." The boy nodded, but his jaw was set with the same determination that had probably marked his brother's last moments. Above them, the sounds of evacuation had faded, leaving only the hum of hidden machinery and their own careful movements. "Motion sensors ahead," Kiernan murmured, his chair's systems detecting the invisible web of security. "Advanced stuff, military grade." "Tommy showed me how to bypass them," Soren said, pointing to a maintenance panel. "The old systems still run parallel to the new ones. He said they can't upgrade everything without risking collapse." Kiernan smiled grimly. The boy's brother had been clever, too clever for his own survival. The panel yielded to Soren's small fingers, revealing a mess of ancient wiring alongside modern fiber optics. "Echo, we're patching you into the original grid. See what you can find." Seconds later, Echo's voice returned, clearer now. "I'm in. Getting facility schematics. Wraith, you need to see this. The quantum computing labs, they're still active. Power usage suggests they never shut down, just went deeper underground." A sudden burst of gunfire interrupted them, not aimed at their position but echoing from below. Screams followed, then silence. "They're eliminating their own people," Kiernan realized, cleaning house before the final phase. "Dad's down there," Soren whispered, fear finally cracking his composure. Kiernan reached out, gripping the boy's shoulder. "We'll find him, but first we need to understand what we're walking into. Echo?" Project Oracle was designed to predict future events using quantum probability matrices. But the original tests showed something else. The system wasn't just predicting the future, it was somehow influencing it. The scientists reported temporal anomalies, causality violations. In English, Echo. They built a machine that could change the past, Wraith. Small changes at first, but the potential. That's why they shut it down. Or tried to. The implications hit Kiernan like a physical blow. Crane doesn't want to develop Mornvale, he wants to bury it. Whatever's down there, it's still running, still changing things. "That's not all," Echo continued. "I found personnel files. Dr. Thane. His real name is Dr. Marcus Thane. He was part of the original Project Oracle team. He's been hiding in plain sight, monitoring the facility. Soren's eyes widened. Dad never talked about before, about when Tommy and I were adopted. Another burst of gunfire, closer now. Through his chair's enhanced audio, Kiernan could hear voices, obsidian operators coordinating their sweep of the lower levels. "They're pushing everything and everyone toward the core," Kiernan said. "Echo, what's at the lowest level?" "The quantum core itself, and there's someone accessing it right now. Power levels are spiking." A new voice cut through their comm system. Victor Crane, his tone smug. "Welcome back, Wraith. I was wondering when you'd figure it out. Your wife did, you know. Right before the accident. She understood what Oracle could do, how it could change everything. Rewrite history itself." "If you hurt Dr. Thane," Kiernan began, but Crane laughed. "Marcus is fine. In fact, he's helping us restart the core. Amazing what people will do when properly motivated. But please, keep coming. I want you to see this. Want you to understand why Neve had to die. Why everyone in Mornvale has to die." The transmission cut off, leaving them in hollow silence. Soren's face had gone pale, but his voice was steady. "The next level has holding cells. Dad might be there." Kiernan checked his weapons one final time. "Echo, how long until the evacuation's complete?" 30 minutes, but Wraith. These power readings, if they fully activate the core, then we have less than that to shut it down." Kiernan's wheelchair hummed as he activated combat systems. "Soren, stay close. We're going to get your father, and then we're going to make Crane pay for every life he's taken." They moved deeper into the facility, following Tommy's hidden marks. Above them, Mornvale continued to empty, its residents unaware that beneath their feet, a battle was being fought over not just their homes, but the very fabric of reality itself. Kiernan's mind was already calculating angles, threats, possibilities. But one thought burned brighter than the rest. Neve had died trying to expose this. Now, finally, he had the chance to make her death mean something. The darkness ahead seemed to pulse with hidden energy as they descended toward whatever nightmare Crane had preserved in this underground tomb. The real question wasn't whether they could stop him. It was whether reality itself would survive the attempt. The holding cell's level was a maze of steel and shadow, the air thick with ozone and the hum of ancient machinery. Kiernan's wheelchair moved silently through the corridors, its sensors mapping guard positions and security systems. Soren stayed close, his eyes darting between the numbered doors, searching for his father. "There," the boy whispered, pointing to cell 23. Through the reinforced window, they could see Dr. Thane slumped over a computer terminal, his hands flying across the keyboard while an obsidian operator stood guard. "Why are you helping them?" Dr. Thane was asking, his voice strained. "You have no idea what Oracle can do, what it's already done." "Just follow your instructions," the guard replied mechanically. "The director wants the core at full power in 20 minutes. Kiernan's chair hummed as he positioned himself at the corridor intersection. "Soren, remember the ventilation shaft we passed? Get to it. When I create a distraction, use it to reach your father." The boy nodded, melting into the shadows with practiced ease. Kiernan allowed himself a moment of sadness. No child should be so skilled at moving through danger. "Echo, I need a power surge to cell block D. Draw their attention." Seconds later, alarms blared as electrical systems overloaded. The guard stepped into the hallway, raising his weapon. He never saw Kiernan's wheelchair emerging from the shadows. The reinforced frame caught him in the knees while a pneumatic arm delivered a precise strike to his throat. The guard dropped without a sound. "Marcus," Kiernan said as he breached the cell. "We need to move." Dr. Thane looked up, his eyes haunted. "You don't understand. They made me activate the temporal containment protocols. The core. It's already changing things. Small things at first, but growing. Reality itself is becoming unstable." Through the ventilation shaft, Soren emerged like a ghost. "Dad!" "No!" Dr. Thane stepped back, horror crossing his face. "You can't be here. Soren, run. The timeline's shifting. I've seen it. In the original sequence, you didn't make it. Tommy tried to save you that night, not the other way around." The boy froze, confusion warring with fear. "What do you mean?" Tommy died protecting me from the rooks. That's what you remember, Dr. Thane's voice cracked. What the core made you remember. But I was there. Oracle showed me all the variations. In most of them, both of you died. First period. I used the core just once to save you. But changing even one death, it created ripples. Kiernan's mind raced, pieces falling into place. The temporal anomalies. They're not just predictions. They're corrections. Reality trying to fix itself. Yes, Dr. Thane grabbed a flash drive from the terminal. Every change creates instability. Crane thinks he can control it, use Oracle to rewrite history on a massive scale. But he's wrong. The system doesn't just change the past, it feeds on it, consumes it. The facility shuddered, dust falling from ancient pipes. Through his earpiece, Echo's voice was urgent. Wraith, the power readings are off the charts. The core's reaching critical mass. How do we shut it down? Kiernan demanded. Dr. Thane's laugh was hollow. You can't. I designed the failsafes myself. The only way to stop it is to overload it, force a temporal collapse that will reset everything in the affected radius. The evacuation, Kiernan realized. That's why Crane wanted Mornvale empty. When the core reaches full power, everything within its influence will be rewritten, Dr. Thane confirmed. Decades of history gone, replaced with whatever version Crane desires. Another tremor rocked the facility. Through his chair's enhanced audio, Kiernan could hear boots on metal, Obsidian teams converging on their position. Echo, how long until the evacuation's complete? 10 minutes. But Wraith, there's something else. The temporal distortions. They're affecting radio signals. I'm picking up transmissions that shouldn't exist, including what? A distress call from Niev from the day she died. The revelation hit Kiernan like a physical blow. His wife's voice, preserved across time itself, calling for help that never came. Or did it? In some alternate timeline, had he saved her? We need to move, he said, forcing the thoughts away. The core chamber. How do we get there? Dr. Thane pointed to a maintenance shaft. Service elevator, but Kiernan, you should know. In every timeline where we try to stop this, everyone in the facility dies. Everyone. Soren grabbed his father's hand. Then we make a new timeline, like you did for me. The boy's words seemed to strengthen Dr. Thane. He nodded, leading them to the elevator. As they descended toward the core, Kiernan's tactical mind was already calculating angles, threats, possibilities. But one thought burned brighter than the rest. Somewhere, in some version of reality, Niev was still alive. Still fighting. The elevator opened onto a scene from a nightmare. The core chamber was a vast spherical room, its walls lined with quantum processors that pulsed with impossible light. In the center, a column of pure energy stretched from floor to ceiling, its surface rippling with images, fragments of alternate timelines bleeding through. And there, at the main control station, stood Victor Crane. He turned as they entered, a smile crossing his face. Right on schedule, he said, spreading his arms. Come to witness history being rewritten? Or should I say, come to witness your wife's death all over again? Kiernan's wheelchair hummed as combat systems activated. Behind him, Dr. Thane pulled Soren close, shielding him from whatever was about to unfold. The only history being rewritten, Kiernan said coldly, is yours. The core pulsed, reality itself seeming to hold its breath as two men, one standing, one seated, prepared to fight for control of time itself. Above them, Mornvale's last residents fled into the morning, unaware that beneath their feet, the past, present, and future were about to collide. The core chamber pulsed with temporal energy, each wave distorting reality like heat waves over hot pavement. Through his wheelchair's sensors, Kiernan could detect multiple quantum signatures, echoes of timelines that never were, or perhaps had been erased. Beautiful, isn't it? Crane gestured at the swirling column of energy. Do you know what I see in there, Wraith? Every possibility, every version of history, including ones where your precious Niev never stuck her nose where it didn't belong. Echo, Kiernan subvocalized. Status on the evacuation? 5 minutes out, but these readings. The core's affecting linear time. 5 minutes here might be 5 seconds or 5 hours topside. Dr. Thane moved forward, keeping Soren behind him. Victor, you have to stop this. The temporal fluctuations are becoming exponential. Even if you succeed in rewriting history. Success? Crane laughed. I already have succeeded. Multiple times. Why do you think Mornvale stayed so perfect for your little experiments, Marcus? Every time something threatened to expose us, every time some resident got too curious, I simply adjusted things. A surge of energy from the core sent ripples through the air. In its light, Kiernan saw ghostly images, alternate versions of events. The night Tommy died, the day of Neve's accident. Moments in time, frozen like insects in amber. You're insane, Kiernan said, his wheelchair systems already mapping firing solutions. Playing God with people's lives. Playing God? Crane's face hardened. I'm correcting mistakes, creating a better version of history, one where threats to national security are eliminated before they emerge, where troublesome investigators have convenient accidents. The core pulsed again, stronger this time. Dr. Thane grabbed a console for support, his face pale. The containment field is failing. If we don't shut it down... We shut nothing down, Crane snapped, drawing a sleek pistol. The next phase is already beginning. Soon the temporal effect will cover all of Seattle, then the entire West Coast. Imagine it. The power to reshape reality itself. Kiernan's enhanced audio picked up movement. Obsidian operators taking position in the upper levels of the chamber. Through his earpiece, Echo's voice was urgent. Wraith, whatever you're going to do it fast. The core's temporal field is expanding. I'm losing contact with the surface. A new image appeared in the swirling energy. Neve, sitting at her desk, reviewing documents. The night before her death. Kiernan felt his heart constrict. Ah, yes, Crane smiled, noticing his reaction. Would you like to see it, the moment I gave the order? Or perhaps... He adjusted something on the control panel, and the image changed. Now Neve was in her car, checking her rearview mirror, unaware of the truck that was about to run her off the road. Stop, Kiernan's voice was ice. Make me. Crane raised his pistol. Oh wait, you can't. Not from that chair. You know what's truly ironic? In the original timeline, you weren't even crippled. That was another adjustment I had to make. Couldn't have you running around causing trouble. The revelation hit like a physical blow. Kiernan's disability, the very thing that had shaped his new life, was just another of Crane's manipulations. Soren's voice cut through the tension. Dad, the numbers. Dr. Thane looked at the display his son was pointing to, and his face went ashen. My God, the temporal feedback. It's not just changing reality, it's devouring it. Every adjustment creates a void that has to be filled. A small price to pay, Crane shrugged. Now let's see what other changes we can make. Perhaps young Soren would be better off never having been born. Or should we give him the same ending as his brother? The threat to Soren snapped something in Kiernan, his wheelchair's hidden weapons deployed with whirring precision. But before he could fire, the core pulse intensified. Reality itself seemed to stutter. Images flashed in the temporal field. Kiernan walking on strong legs, Neve alive and smiling, Tommy and Soren playing in the street, Mornvale as it might have been. Possibilities cascade like falling dominoes. Echo, Kiernan gritted through the disorientation. The evacuation? Static answered him. They were on their own. You can't stop this, Crane gloated. Even if you kill me, the process is automated now. In 10 minutes, the temporal field reaches critical mass. Everything within 50 miles ceases to exist in its current form, replaced by my improved version. Dr. Thane stepped forward, his hands raised. There's another way. The quantum harmonics. If we reverse the polarity... A shot rang out. Dr. Thane stumbled, red blooming on his chest. Soren screamed. I respected you, Marcus, Crane said, his pistol smoking. But you've outlived your usefulness. In the new timeline, you'll have died a hero years ago. Much neater. Kiernan's wheelchair surged forward, weapons deploying. But Crane was ready. He fired again, the bullet pinging off the chair's armored frame. You never understood, did you? Crane backed toward the core, its energy wrapping around him like a cloak. I'm not just changing history, I'm becoming it. Every adjustment, every erasure makes me stronger, makes me more real. Through the chaos, Soren had reached his father. Dr. Thane was still breathing, but barely. He grabbed his son's hand, pressing something into it, the flash drive from the holding cell. The failsafe, he whispered. Your brother. Found it. That's why. Understanding dawned in Soren's eyes. He looked at Kiernan, then at the core. I know how to stop it, he said, but... The boy's voice trailed off as another temporal wave washed through the chamber. In its wake, reality itself seemed to be unraveling. The past and present were colliding, and the future hung by a thread. Kiernan positioned his wheelchair between Crane and the others, his weapons armed, his mind racing. They had one chance to end this, but the cost would be beyond calculation. The core pulsed again, and time itself held its breath, waiting to see which version of history would survive. Reality rippled like water around them as Soren clutched the flash drive, his small face set with determination that mirrored his fallen father's. Tommy found a backdoor in the system, he said, voice trembling but clear. A way to reverse the temporal flow, but what? Kiernan's wheelchair hummed as he maintained position between them and Crane. It requires a focal point, someone inside the core when it collapses. Soren looked at his father's still form. Someone to anchor the reset. Crane laughed, the sound distorting through waves of temporal energy. The boy's right. That was Marcus's great failsafe, sacrificing one life to save many, but he never had the courage to use it, to make the hard choices. Through the swirling quantum field, more images flickered. Neve discovering Project Oracle's files, Tommy finding the bunker entrance, Dr. Thane saving his son through forbidden technology. Moments in time, all connected, all leading to this point. Echo? Kiernan tried one last time. Static answered, then through the interference, fragments, period, temporal field expanding, reality destabilizing. Wraith, the whole city. You see? Crane spread his arms, the core's energy seeming to flow through him. It's too late to stop it. In minutes, the field reaches critical mass. A new timeline will assert itself, my timeline. One where threats are eliminated before they emerge, where America's enemies disappear before they become enemies. And how many lives will you erase to create this perfect world? Kiernan's voice was steel. As many as necessary, starting with you. Crane raised his pistol again, but this time aimed at Soren. Drop your weapons, Wraith. Let's see how many times I have to kill the boy before you break. The threat to Soren unlocked something in Kiernan's mind. Combat protocols he'd buried years ago. His wheelchair's hidden arsenal deployed fully. Miniature rocket launchers, electromagnetic pulse generators, even the experimental sonic weapons he'd never dared use. The only one being erased, Kiernan said coldly, is you. The chamber erupted into chaos. Kiernan's first salvo forced Crane behind a quantum processor bank, while return fire from the obsidian operators above sparked off his chair's armor. But the temporal distortions made combat unpredictable. Bullets curved in impossible ways. Energy weapons created ripples in space-time itself. Soren, Kiernan called over the firefight. The flash drive. What exactly did Tommy find? The boy's fingers flew over a nearby terminal, inserting the drive. A command sequence. Dad. He built in a way to invert the temporal field. Instead of rewriting reality, it would restore it. Every change, every manipulation, undone. Another reality wave washed through the chamber. For a moment, Kiernan saw himself standing, whole and strong, fighting alongside a very much alive Niev. The vision hurt more than any bullet. If we activate the failsafe, Soren continued, his voice catching, everything goes back. Tommy's death, your legs, Mom's. Everyone who died stays dead. But if we don't, then Crane wins, Kiernan finished, and reality itself unravels. Crane's voice cut through the chaos. You still don't understand. I've seen every possibility, every outcome. In each one, I survive. I adapt. I become stronger because I'm willing to do what you're not. Sacrifice everything for the greater good. A stray shot from above hit one of the quantum processors. Reality stuttered like a skipping record. Through the temporal distortions, Kiernan saw multiple versions of the chamber overlaid. One where he was already dead, another where Crane lay bleeding, yet another where the core had already exploded. The failsafe, Kiernan said to Soren, making his decision. Do it. Kiernan. The boy's eyes were too old for his face. The anchor point. Someone has to. I know. Kiernan's hands tightened on his wheelchair's controls. Get to the elevator. Find Detective Kestrel. Tell her I finally kept my promise to Neve. Understanding dawned in Soren's eyes. No, there has to be another way. There isn't. Your father knew it. Tommy knew it. Kiernan managed a smile. Sometimes the only way to fix the past is to sacrifice the future. Crane must have realized what they were planning. He broke cover, firing wildly. You can't. The temporal backlash will destroy everything I've built. That's the idea. Kiernan's wheelchair surged forward, weapons blazing. He caught one obsidian operator in the chest, another in the leg. Return fire sparked off his armor, but he pressed on, pushing toward the core. Soren, now! The boy's fingers entered the command sequence, tears streaming down his face. The core's energy began to shift, its color changing from blue to angry red. No! Crane rushed forward, but he was too late. Kiernan's wheelchair crossed the containment barrier, entering the quantum field itself. The energy wrapped around him like liquid lightning. Through the pain, he saw everything. Every timeline. Every possibility. Neve alive and smiling. Himself walking in the sun. Tommy and Soren growing up together. 1,000 maybes, all converging on this moment. It's done, he heard Soren call out. The field's inverting. Crane's scream of rage turned to one of fear as reality began to fold in on itself. The temporal waves increased in intensity, washing away his carefully constructed alterations like sand castles before a tide. In the heart of the quantum storm, Kiernan felt his consciousness expanding, touching every version of himself across the multiverse. And in that moment he understood. Some things were meant to be fixed points, anchors in the sea of possibility. The core's light became blinding as the failsafe reached critical mass. The last thing Kiernan saw was Soren reaching the elevator, clutching his father's flash drive. The last thing he heard was Crane's final scream as reality reasserted itself. Then everything went white, and time itself held its breath, waiting to see what would remain when the quantum dust settled. Mornvale District emerged from the temporal collapse like a drowning man breaking the surface. Reality settled in layers, memories reshuffling themselves like a deck of cards being sorted. Detective Sindra Kestrel stood at the police cordon, watching as emergency teams secured the perimeter around what remained of the bunker entrance. The morning sun cast long shadows across streets that seemed both familiar and strange, as if the neighborhood had been reassembled from memory, with subtle differences only locals would notice. The evacuation teams reported full success, but something about the empty houses and silent streets felt permanent, as if Mornvale itself was holding its breath. "Detective," Officer Rhodes Blackthorne called out, jogging up with a tablet. "You need to see this. We're getting weird readings from underground and the witness statements, they don't match up." Sindra reviewed the reports, her trained mind noting the inconsistencies. Some residents remembered a peaceful neighborhood with no gang activity. Others recalled the Rook's reign of terror. A few even mentioned a quiet man in a wheelchair who kept to himself, though no one could quite recall his name. "It's like watching a photograph develop," Isolde Cross said, approaching from the community center. She looked different somehow, younger yet with eyes that had seen too much. The memories are there, but they're settling. "What exactly happened down there?" Sindra asked. though part of her wasn't sure she wanted to know. Isolde handed her a worn file. Tommy Thane left this with me the night he died. Documentation about Project Oracle, about what they were really doing beneath our feet. He knew. He knew they'd try to erase it all. The file contained photographs, notes, and most importantly, a letter addressed to Soren. Sindra looked up sharply. "The boy, where is he?" "Here." Soren emerged from the community center, his father's flash drive clutched in one hand. He looked both older and younger, a child carrying the weight of multiple timelines in his mind. "I remember. Everything. Both versions. All versions." Before Sindra could respond, her radio crackled with impossible static. Through the interference, she caught fragments of familiar voices. "Temporal realignment complete. Core containment achieved. Target crane eliminated across all timelines." And then, clearest of all, a voice she recognized as Kiernan's. "Echo. Mission accomplished. The price. Worth it." Soren's head snapped up at the voice. "He did it. He anchored the reset." The boy's eyes filled with tears. "But that means..." "It means he saved us all," Dr. Thane said, walking slowly from the community center. The bullet wound that should have killed him was gone, replaced by memories of a life both lived and unlived. By becoming the focal point, he absorbed the temporal backlash, every change, every manipulation Crane made. "Reversed," Isolde finished. "But the cost..." Sindra's tablet beeped with an incoming report. The bunker's lower levels had collapsed, sealing Project Oracle away forever. But in the quantum readings, there was something else, a persistent signal like a heartbeat in the static. "He's not gone," Soren said with quiet certainty. "Not completely. The temporal field. It couldn't fully erase someone who chose to be its anchor. He's everywhere now, every possibility, every timeline." As if to confirm his words, the morning light shifted, and for a moment Sindra saw them, ghostly images playing out across Mornvale. Kiernan walking on strong legs, smiling at his wife. Kiernan in his wheelchair, teaching self-defense at the community center. Kiernan facing down the rooks, protecting his neighborhood. Versions upon versions, all equally real and unreal. "The quantum harmonics are stabilizing," Dr. Thane reported, checking readings on a device that shouldn't exist. "Reality is settling, finding its natural rhythm." Through the static of her radio, Echo's voice came one final time. "Wraith, thank you." The temporal echoes began to fade, leaving behind a Mornvale that was both old and new. The gangs were gone, their existence erased not by quantum manipulation but by the natural course of justice. The community center stood proud, its walls decorated with murals of hope rather than graffiti of fear. And there, in the small garden where a wheelchair once sat, flowers bloomed in perfect rows, maintained by hands that now existed only in memory and possibility. "What do we do now?" Officer Blackthorne asked, looking lost among the quantum ghosts of what had been. Sindra watched as Soren walked to the garden, kneeling to touch a blooming flower. The boy who remembered everything, who carried the weight of multiple timelines in his young mind. "We rebuild," she said firmly. "We honor the sacrifice by making sure this neighborhood, this reality, is worth saving." Dr. Thane joined his son in the garden, his memories of both timelines giving his movements a careful grace. He knew, knew that anchoring the reset would scatter him across time itself. But he chose it anyway. "Because that's what heroes do," Soren said softly. "They make the hard choices." Above them, the morning sun continued to rise over Mornvale District, its light touching streets that had been both saved and reborn. Reality had been restored, not to some perfect version, but to its natural state, where hope and struggle, joy and pain existed in proper balance. And somewhere, in the quantum echoes that still whispered through the neighborhood's quiet corners, a wheelchair's soft hum could sometimes be heard. A reminder that some guardians watch over their charges not from above, but from every possible version of what could have been. The war for Mornvale's soul was over. The price had been paid in possibilities rather than blood. And in the end, a man who had lost everything had become everything. A quantum ghost, forever watching over the reality he had died to protect. 3 months after the temporal reset, Mornvale District had found its new rhythm. The quantum echoes had faded to whispers, but their effects lingered in subtle ways. Residents who had lived through both timelines walked with a certain awareness, as if they could still see the ghostly overlays of what might have been. The community center, under Isolde Cross's leadership, had become more than just a gathering place. One room was dedicated to a memorial, photographs and mementos from both timelines carefully preserved. Tommy Thane's original research sat in a glass case alongside Dr. Thane's quantum equations and a single wheelchair wheel found in the rubble of the collapsed bunker. Soren visited the memorial daily, though his father worried about the weight of carrying multiple sets of memories. The boy had started writing everything down, not just what had happened, but what could have happened, what should have happened. His journals became a chronicle of quantum possibilities, a testament to the man who had scattered himself across time to save them all. Detective Sindra Kestrel found herself drawn to Mornvale more often than her duties required. Something about the district called to her. Perhaps the lingering sense that reality here was still settling, still finding its final form. The temporal readings are finally stable, Dr. Thane told her one evening, showing her data on a modified tablet. The quantum harmonics have returned to normal, but there's something else. He led her to the garden where Kiernan's house had stood. The property remained empty, but the flowers continued to bloom in perfect rows, tended by unseen hands. The quantum field left echoes, he explained. Not just memories, but impressions. Moments where multiple timelines intersect. As if to demonstrate, the air shimmered. For a brief moment they saw him. Kiernan in his wheelchair reading a book in the evening light. Then Kiernan standing, whole and strong, teaching a group of children self-defense. The images overlapped, equally real and unreal, before fading like smoke. "He's still here," Soren said, joining them in the garden. Not like before, but everywhere. Every possibility at once. The boy had started a garden of his own behind the community center, teaching other children how to nurture life from the soil. His quiet strength reminded many of another guardian who had watched over Mornvale from a wheelchair. Echo's voice still came through sometimes on encrypted channels, carrying snippets of mission reports from a timeline that no longer existed. Detective Kestrel kept recordings of these quantum transmissions, proof that some heroes lived on in the static between realities. The rooks were gone, their existence erased not by temporal manipulation, but by the natural course of justice. Victor Crane had vanished more thoroughly, every version of him scattered across timelines that never came to be. Project Oracle remained sealed beneath Mornvale's streets, its power contained by the sacrifice that had anchored reality itself. But perhaps the most profound change was in the district's people. Those who remembered both timelines had learned something about the nature of choice and consequence. They understood now that every moment contained infinite possibilities, and the reality they lived in was precious precisely because it had been chosen, protected, preserved. Dr. Thane continued his research, but now focused on understanding rather than changing. His papers on quantum consciousness and temporal psychology were already drawing attention from universities worldwide. But his most important work was with his son, helping Soren navigate the complex legacy of being a child who remembered everything. 1 year to the day after the reset, they gathered in the community center's memorial room. Isolde had organized a remembrance ceremony, not just for those lost in the temporal war, but for the man who had given everything to ensure their reality remained intact. In every possible timeline, Dr. Thane said, addressing the gathered residents, there was one constant. Whether walking or in his wheelchair, whether fighting or at peace, Kiernan Kalvaris chose to protect what mattered. Not just lives, but the very fabric of reality itself. Soren stepped forward, placing a fresh journal in the memorial case. "I see him sometimes," he admitted quietly. "Not like a ghost, but like ripples in time. Teaching, watching, guarding. He's everywhere now, in every choice we make, every possibility we explore. Detective Kestrel understood. She'd seen it too. Moments where reality seemed to shimmer, where the quantum echoes of a warrior's sacrifice still resonated through the streets he'd died to protect. The memorial ceremony ended as evening fell, but Soren lingered in the garden. The flowers bloomed impossibly perfect, maintained by hands that existed in every timeline at once. Above, stars began to emerge, their light reaching them from the past, present, and all possible futures. "We're all quantum ghosts," Dr. Thane had written in his latest paper. "Every choice we make creates new timelines, new possibilities. But some choose to become more, to scatter themselves across reality itself, ensuring that the possibilities they protect remain safe, remain real." In Mornvale District, where reality had been broken and remade, where a man in a wheelchair had become everything to save everyone, the quantum echoes continued their endless dance. And in the static between possibilities, in the whispers between what was and what could have been, a guardian still watched over his chosen reality. Not from above, but from every possible version of what might have been. A quantum ghost, forever ensuring that the timeline he died to protect remained intact, remained worth saving. The war for Mornvale's soul was over. But its guardian, scattered across infinite possibilities, remained eternal. A reminder that some choices, some sacrifices, transcend time itself. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.